I'm the CEO and founder of Carbon Cure, and I would say something that most of my colleagues wouldn't know is that the company actually had its origin in Timbuktu, Mali. Yeah, so I was just graduating school at the time, had just done my thesis, and looking for some adventure. And I found my way to Timbuktu. Timbuktu led me to attend UN climate meetings in Kenya, but probably most importantly, it actually brought me to my wife, where I met her, and she herself is and her family are involved in the clean tech industry. So it's actually a family business that we're in, and very personal. And Timbuktu has a really special part for why we're here today. So that's probably something most people wouldn't know about.
Wow, that's a really great story. I met my wife in Bakersfield. Some people think it's Timbuktu. Where did your journey begin in the green tech industry?
It's kind of funny. I don't think I could say I was an environmentalist. I was kind of like a humanist. I really felt like I wanted to work in international development and things like that. And I learned pretty quickly that I'm from Canada. Who am I to say how people should evolve societies? But climate's one of those intersectional issues where you realize everyone has a role to play. And in fact, rich countries have an outsized role to play. And so I got really interested in figuring out what those solutions looked like in order to help people, because the planet will be fine, right? It's like what's going to happen to us that I think really matters. But in that same vein, I had a grandfather who was an engineer. He was very matter of fact. He was not political. He just read The Economist every day. And I remember him sending me emails about, for instance, the Canadian Coast Guard adding weapons to their icebreaker ships because they recognized the Arctic was melting and it was a geopolitical issue. And so he looked at the issue from that lens, and I thought that was both fascinating in terms of what it means for the future of, again, humanity and how we all live together, not just today, but for truly the future. And maybe a little hyperbolic, but kind of the future of our whole race.
All of what we do within this green space, as a byproduct of us protecting families, communities, and businesses, we also save the world. Now, to continue that conversation, I think the hat that I love the most in this quest to help protect the planet, save the world, is the role that I cherish the most, which is that of father, that of parent. And this may divert a little bit, but I think the big thing that we have to look at is, if you want to save the planet, teach your children. Teach your children to treat people the way they would want to be treated. Teach your children to be fair, to be tolerant, to be respectful. Teach your children that every action, there's a consequence. Teach your children to love the environment and nature. Teach your children to love to learn and love education. Teach your children to be good and why that's so important. You want to change the world? Teach your children.
So, Mahatma Gandhi, he had a quote, and it was, first they laugh at you, then they ignore you, then they fight with you, and then they join you.
Win, right?
Yeah. And so I feel like that this journey, when I walked into the Lennox Foundation, we all sat down and we had this idea. I think all of us thought it was going to happen instantaneously because really there is no competitive advantage to decarbonization. It is something all of us have to do. If one company does it and another one doesn't do it, what happens? It's like everyone loses their customers. So we have to do this together. It is a huge cooperative effort, and the Lennox Foundation is home of, I think, one of the greatest human experiments of cooperation. So I think that that's my advice, is just to remember, if you have a really good idea, it's very possible the first thing will happen is people will just be like, no, you can't do that. And the second thing they'll do is they'll be like, oh my God, you are so stupid, and they'll laugh at you. And then the third thing they'll do is they'll try and figure out how to tear you to pieces. And then one day they wake up and they realize, oh my God, that makes so much sense.
And then you win. What are some of the low-hanging fruits that professionals, or just maybe I would say people could bite into today to take advantage of?
Well, I think maybe this is a low-hanging fruit, or it's a slightly different way to look at it, but I would say don't worry about not having the whole plan as an excuse to not having any plan, right? We know that there are some good things we can get going on. We know that, if you look at the success that we've had deploying solar resources here in California is a great example. Have we solved the whole problem yet? We have not solved the whole problem yet, and there's a lot of things left to get done. But I'm sure glad that back a decade or more ago, we put the rules in place that allowed us to get started on that journey. So I would look at it, we look at energy storage, the business we're in, and the scale that we have to get moving on is so big that getting all fussed about whether we've found the perfect solution that's the ultimate thing forever and always is going to get in the way of our just getting started.
I think I've often pondered that the notion of energy and power have many different meanings, at least in English. And so we can talk about a person having good energy or getting energy from something or something draining energy. And then we talk a lot about power, and particularly, power over, power with, how to share power. So when I think about what our opportunity is here is to not continue to create the extractive mindset that views people as commodities that can be thrown away. And I really believe that the democratization of energy, we have an opportunity here to ensure that all people have access to power and energy. And that, and so the environmental justice part of this is incredibly important. And that if we miss that, if we miss the unintended consequences, for instance, of creating energy deserts where people don't have access to energy in order to be able to create business and work and agriculture, that if we do that, if we step over that, we will be losing perhaps a once in a humanity, and we haven't been around for that long, but once in a humanity opportunity to ensure that people have access to it in a fair and equitable way, so that their energy can be going not to carrying water a mile in a gallon jug, but that they can be using the sun to move water to water fields and to lift 1 billion people out of subsistence poverty. So I think that's the stretch goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love it. And would it be fair to say you're a humanist in addition to an environmentalist?
Of course. I mean, yeah, I'm a humanist. I have a deep sense of fair, what fair is, and I also recognize that human history is littered with very unfair things, and that life is often not fair. But I think we have an opportunity to wake up, and that's what this time is about. Ultimately, it is the great transition, and the energy and power that created the economy that we have now emerged out of an extractive kind of mindset. And we have to shift that. Batteries withstanding and needing to get metal from the ground. But we have to shift from that manifest destiny to actually a really different way of thinking about how we interrelate with the planet.